Hello, and welcome to the Lines That Never Were series, where we talk about proposed but forgotten New York City subway projects. In this video, we will talk about the Morningside Avenue line. In 1913, the dual contracts were signed, and the crown jewel for the BMT was the BMT Broadway line. Located in Manhattan, it was a four-track trunk line that would start from the Montague Street Tunnel and the Manhattan Bridge. By 1920, the current BMT Broadway line was complete, with the 60th Street Tunnel connecting up to the Astoria and Flushing lines. However, the BMT wanted more, and wanted to extend the BMT Broadway line north via 8th Avenue to Inwood. This would parallel the IRT 7th Avenue line, and the BMT hoped that their new trunk line would divert riders from the IRT to the BMT. Mayor John Hyland had the same idea, but instead of approving the BMT's idea, he took the 8th Avenue alignment for himself by proposing the I&D 8th Avenue line. That line was the first line that the I&D opened in 1932. By 1939, ridership in Washington Heights rapidly grew to the point where planners wanted more train service to northern Manhattan. Even though the I&D Concourse line and Inwood branches opened, along with the existing IRT 7th Avenue line and IRT 9th Avenue L, the dense northern Manhattan neighborhoods demanded more transit options. Moreover, I&D Concourse line and the Inwood branches were limited in how many trains they could run, because branching half capacity on either line. The IRT 9th Avenue L was in poor shape, while the IRT 7th Avenue line's capacity was capped due to sharing of Bronx-bound express trains further south of the line. Remember that this is 1939 and that the IRT service patterns consisted of express trains to 242nd Street and the White Plains Road line, and local trains to 145th Street, Lenox Avenue. Therefore, the Morningside Avenue line was born. This line was proposed as a way to use excess capacity in not only the I&D Northern Manhattan branches, but also the BMT Broadway line. After 57th Street, 4 tracks became 2, meaning that express trains had to end at 57th Street, limiting capacity. But with the plan, the express tracks would join the local, and would run under Central Park to 110th Street, and then run under Morningside Avenue to 145th Street. After that, there were plans to either join it with the I&D Concourse line, or to the Inwood branch, providing them with extra capacity. However, in the 1939 I&D second system, the line would end at 145th Street, with no connections. So we can only speculate. Due to World War II, this plan was delayed. After the war, this plan was abandoned in favor of extending the BMT Broadway line's express tracks east towards Queens and 2nd Avenue, instead of Morningside Avenue. It was felt that this plan would be better than the Morningside Avenue line, as it would bring Queens and northeastern Manhattan trains to Times Square and the 7th Avenue Broadway region, a dense business hub. In 1968, the Program for Action was proposed, and the aforementioned plan was proposed as the 63rd Street line. Due to the fiscal crisis, the 63rd Street line was delayed and opened in 1989. Even though the 63rd Street line opened a connection to the BMT Broadway line's express tracks, it wasn't used much, mostly for rerouting trains. With the completion of the first phase of the 2nd Avenue subway, that connection was finally utilized in regular service, with Q trains using that portion to get on the 2nd Avenue subway. As for the Morningside Avenue line, that was history. The Morningside Avenue line does not have that many remnants, but there are still remnants if you know where to look. At 57th Street, 7th Avenue, you will see a gap in the tunnel wall. What are those? Well, those are abandoned trackways that were supposed to carry Morningside Avenue bound trains. These trackways curve slightly west before ending. It was the same story with the express tracks, but those tracks are now connected to the BMT 63rd Street line. I don't think that the Morningside Avenue line will make any sense. Firstly, you will create another branch, and that will cut frequencies on the queue to 2nd Avenue to around 4 trains per hour. That is not ideal, as the MTA spent $4.5 billion on the 2nd Avenue subway, and the 2nd Avenue subway is already underutilized, as it can handle 30 trains per hour, but only 10 to 12 trains per hour run on it during rush hours. Furthermore, there are 2 high-capacity subway lines in the area, and they could support more riders if you have the correct service patterns. Unfortunately, that is not the case, as trains on the IND 8th Avenue line are notorious for showing up infrequently. This is because the 59th Street junction limits capacity on the A, B, C, and D trains. In the previous video on Nostrand, I went in depth on how this junction limits capacity, but here is the short version. A and D trains share a track, and B and C trains share a track. At 59th Street, B and D trains merge onto a single track to go onto the IND 6th Avenue line. When a B and D train shows up at the same time, one of them has to be delayed for the other one to go, and whatever train is behind the delayed train is also delayed. To minimize delays, any service pattern proposed would keep the A and C trains on one track and the B and D trains on another, as the B and D trains would have to merge and travel onto the IND 6th Avenue line. Under the Van Stuckenragen and Ude Schultz deinterlining plans, they addressed this. The A train would run local to 168th Street, and the C train would run local to Bedford Park Boulevard. The B would take over the current A express patterns by running to Inwood, and the D train would remain the same. This would give default express trains to any rider in Inwood and the Bronx, while keeping B and D trains separate from the A and C trains, eliminating the 59th Street junction. The local tracks of the IND 8th Avenue line would see 24 trains per hour, an increase from 15 trains per hour. That is an increase of 60%, and 24 trains per hour is a train every 2.5 minutes, showing how powerful the interlining is. The Morningside Avenue line is an interesting relic of the IND, where in order to address branching issues, they proposed a new train line to solve it. Today, however, we should be focused on squeezing as much capacity out of our subway system as possible. This is achieved by deinterlining. And while I don't support a Morningside Avenue line now, I strongly support deinterlining the 59th Street junction. With the interlining of this junction, more service can be added, which will not only have positive effects in Manhattan, but in Brooklyn and the Bronx, as those boosted lines run to those boroughs. Anyway, what are your thoughts on the Morningside Avenue line? Let us know in the comments below, and have a good day.